So what is it with these religious structures, their attention to the sun, right? As well as these religious figures, their attention to the sun. You have all these monuments throughout the world, or these temples, right, that follow the sun. You see zodiac signs on the floors of cathedrals. Here we have sun disk Jesus in the middle with the zodiac wheel around him, the floor of a synagogue. It's very old. So old that the study goes back to ancient Egypt. So let's explore these connections a little bit further. And rather than looking at the connections to the world with the sun, we're actually going to look at some stories that talk about the night sky itself. This is where all this stuff gets really, really interesting. This is where a lot of this stuff may come to a shock or a surprise. But I assure you this is going to be worth paying attention to, and you guys are going to have a lot more information. This is going to clarify and clear up a lot of questions for you. So this is an app called Star Tracker. It's a celestial viewing app. It uses the gyroscope in your device, your phone or tablet or whatever. As you move it around and you look at the night sky, it's going to tell you what you're looking at. I can also just kind of manually move this thing around. Sometimes it gets a little glitchy depending on internet connection and stuff like that. But it's a great app. It's a lot of fun, and I use it an awful lot now. So to explain this next little story, we're going to start here at Polaris. This green line is my horizon, right? So I'm looking north. And if I turn 90 degrees to my right, now I'm looking to the east, okay? It's in the evening right now, but right now I have this set to show the morning to explain the story that I'm about to share with you guys. If I keep turning 90 degrees again, I look at the southern sky here, right? And 90 degrees again. This is the west. This dotted line here is the ecliptic. That's the path that the sun and the planets follow throughout the year. They don't deviate much away from that dotted line. So here we have constellations that rise in the east. They then come straight up this way. And from this point, straight up at the meridian on, these constellations are going to be appearing to set and go down under the western horizon there. The first story that I'm going to share with you guys is actually out of the book of Revelation. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to read some of these verses out of Revelation and a few other stories out of the Bible. Now, one thing to keep in mind is please don't think that I'm trying to preach to anybody. I'm not lecturing anybody. I'm just simply relating these verses to what I've been learning about the night sky, literally. So even if you guys are not familiar with the Bible, or if you never cared to read it, just look at this like it's entertainment. So Revelation 12, and there appeared a great wonder in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon under her feet, and upon her head a crown of 12 stars. And she, being with child, cried, travailed in birth, and pain to be delivered. And there appeared another wonder in heaven, and behold, a great red dragon, having 7 heads and 10 horns, and 7 crowns upon his heads. And his tail drew a third part of the stars of heaven, and did cast them to the earth. And the dragon stood before the woman which was ready to be delivered, for to devour her child as soon as it was born. And she brought forth a man-child, who was to rule all the nations with a rod of iron. And her child was caught up unto God, and to his throne. Now in Revelation we have this sign in heaven, a woman clothed with the sun, and the moon was at her feet. Around a new moon, in the fall or late summer, this sign appears in heaven. Okay, she was about to give birth to a man that was going to rule with an iron scepter. That's the iron scepter of the sun, or she gives the birth to the sun itself. Now, she's going to give birth, but there's this serpent at her feet, right? Revelation says, I saw another sign in heaven, and it was a great dragon, Draco, dragon, who had the power in his tail to sweep away a third of the stars in heaven. Draco governs a third of that celestial sphere, right? He's circumpolar. He's going to go around Polaris. never setting. Who can defeat him? Right? Now that dragon cast down, you have Hercules here. Remember, Hercules in the 12 tasks is the sun through these 12 zodiac signs. More on that later. But correlating with Hercules fighting the Hydra, the multi-headed beast, he cuts off one head and they grow back, right? The fatal wound now healed.
All right, you bad, okay.
Hey, Phil, that wasn't so hard.
Kid, how many horns do you see?
6.
Close enough. Let's get you cleaned up. That doesn't sound good. Definitely not good!
This dragon cast down to the earth, that great serpent of old, the multi-headed beast, many heads, horns on its heads, and the 7 crowns, or the 7 diadems, and the crown on the serpent's head. Okay, this is a 7-starred constellation called Corona Borealis. It's the crown. And there was a war in heaven. Michael and his angels fought against the dragon, and the dragon fought against his angels, and prevailed not, neither was their place found any more in heaven. And the great dragon was cast out, that old serpent called the devil and Satan, which deceiveth the whole world. He was cast out into the earth, and his angels were cast out with him. Now, as for the reference to Michael and his angels defeating the dragon, right, casting the dragon down to the earth, way back from the 12th century forward, so before the year 1200 to now, there's this festival that's still celebrated among certain Christian communities called Michaelmas Day. Now, Michaelmas Day is celebrated during this time of year, September 29th, when the sun is in the vicinity of Virgo. And if we look at some of this really old artwork, again, this is 12th century artwork, we have this attention to what we see in the stars. So you've got the wings of Virgo. Notice the sun disk behind Michael's head. He's even holding what looks like the sun, okay, signifying the woman clothed with the sun even. Below that, you've got the scales of Libra. And then with this big staff here, you can see it stabbing the dragon down at the bottom. Now, another way to show how this makes sense, remember this green line is my horizon, right? When the sun rises, the stars disappear, okay? So when the sun is in Virgo, the dragon is going to disappear from the sky at sunrise. The dragon's defeated, so to speak. And he's only defeated for a short time, because as the sun moves through these other signs, he's going to show up again in the evening. And when we get down to 12:13 here, and when the dragon saw that he was cast unto the earth, he persecuted the woman, which brought forth the man-child. And the woman were given 2 wings of a great eagle, that she may fly into the wilderness into her place, where she is nourished for a time and times and a half time, from the face of the serpent. Now there's another serpent here. Virgo's surrounded by snakes, okay? To the south we have Hydra. Hydra's always underneath this woman. The woman is given wings, right? This is flying straight up into the sky, following this dotted line, until she eventually sets over here in the west. Now over here in the west, we have these waters. This is the river Eridanus. This is Cetus, the sea whale. We've got the 2 fish of Pisces. You've also got Aquarius down here, the water bear. Okay, this is water world to the west. And the serpent cast out of his mouth water as a flood after the woman, that he might cause her to be carried away of the flood. And the earth helped the woman, and the earth opened her mouth and swallowed up the flood, which the dragon cast out of his mouth. So, Revelation says this serpent casts out a flood to try and catch the woman, right? But the earth as all of this sets, the earth is going to swallow the flood, right? Now, quick tangent, more on this being water world. Over here, all setting at the same time, you have these other characters. You've got Cephas, Cassiopeia, and Andromeda, okay? In Greek mythology, Poseidon gets upset with Cephas for claiming to be more beautiful than one of his nymphs, or he claimed that Cassiopeia was. So Poseidon sends Cetus, this big sea whale, or the monster out of the sea, right, to the shores of Cephas's kingdom. Cephas and Cassiopeia consult an oracle. They say, how do we get rid of this whale? They say, you need to sacrifice your daughter, Andromeda. And Poseidon chains her to a rock to be with the sea whale. Now, if you Google the rock constellation, Andromeda is going to pop up because of this, because of that story. So, in the Bible, Jesus calls Peter Cephas. Okay, Cephas. And Andrew is like saying Cephas and Andromeda. Now, if that's still vague, if that's not clear enough, remember Peter, or Cephas, and Andrew were both the sons of Jonah. Jonah spends 3 days in the belly of a whale. Okay, they were fishermen, right? Jesus says, come with me and I'll teach you how to be fishers of men. The 3 days in the belly of the whale, naturally, Peter, or Cephas, denies Jesus 3 times. Okay, you have this 3-day scenario. Now remember, that was a quick tangent. Okay, I just wanted to clarify that these were the waters to the west. And as we come up into the midheaven and back down to the east, we have this woman who's headed to the waters. Now, you understand the woman, right? Going into the heavens, the serpent casting out the flood, right? The waters swallowed up by the earth. Now, there are more signs that we read in Revelation. Now, after the sun passes through this sign, it's going to start rising in front of the scales. The scales of Libra we see Lady Justice holding on every courthouse, right? The Justice Department is represented by the scales of Libra. If I stay perpendicular to this dotted line, the ecliptic, we have these constellations that are called Deacons, or they go alongside the signs of the zodiac. Okay? Deacons of Libra. To the north, we have Corona Borealis, or the crown. This was literally depicted as a crown of thorns back in the artwork of the 14 through 1600s. And to the south, we have the constellation of Crux, or the cross. So as the sun rises in front of the scales of justice, it is judged. Okay? It gains its crown and its cross, and the days start becoming shorter than the nights. Revelation goes on, it talks about a beast with the power in its tail to torment men for 5 months. This is Scorpio, right? Now, Scorpio is 1, Sagittarius is 2, Capricorn is 3, Aquarius is 4, Pisces is 5. Okay, there's your 5 months of torment, and then we're saved by the Lamb, or the Ram of Aries, the spring, when day and night are in balance again, and the sun passes over the equator in the springtime. The Jews celebrate this. They even call it Passover, right? Or Christians celebrate Easter. Okay, we say, He is risen. Easter is always right after the first full moon of the equinox. It's the Sunday following that full moon. Now, the Lamb, okay, Moses, as Michelangelo depicted him with horns on his head in his artwork, and we've seen this throughout the world. Moses blows the ram's horn, right? And the Jews even do this. They even eat lamb around this festival. Moses is representative of Aries. Now Aries parts the waters. Okay, I just showed you guys how these are the waters. Aries has his foot on the head of that beast out of the sea. We're saved by the Lamb, the blood of the Lamb, as we begin a new solar season. Now there are 4 riders, right, in Revelation, or the horsemen. They're all carrying things. One has the scales, one has a sword. In the oldest cuneiform writings, this Scorpio constellation used to be the double sword constellation. If that throws you off, the next rider has a bow and a crown. Okay? And the 4th is death itself. Now down here in Capricorn, that is the point of the death of the sun. That's the lowest point, right? When the sun is the weakest throughout the year. These 4 horsemen control a quarter of the earth, right? 4 out of 12. Then you have your baptism, if you will, these water signs, and the Lamb. Okay, before Scorpio was the scorpion, it was the eagle. The eagle is one of the 4 living creatures, right? The eagle, the lion, the bull, and the man. The 4 living creatures, or the 4 beasts, represent the 4 signs that are in the middle or at the climax of each of the 4 seasons. They mark the seasons. Now that's Revelation, but I've got one more story for you. Now, as the sun starts rising in front of the man that's bearing water, if you head out after sunset, you can watch this play out in the southern sky, where this big boat starts to rise and eventually set, right? This big boat is called Argo, A-R-G-O. And we're going to bring them up a little more. If I stay in front of this boat, we've got Canis Major, Canis Minor, 2 dogs, staying on top of the boat, just looking up northward now. Now I'm looking straight up. I've got Leo and Leo Minor. Further to the north, I've got Ursa Major and Ursa Minor. Okay, I've got 2 bears, 2 lions, 2 dogs. Okay, we even got 2 people, the twins, but there's these animals on this boat called Argo that covers a massive portion of the southern sky. Animals 2 by 2 by 2. Okay, thinking of Noah's Ark. Now, if that doesn't do it for you, remember Noah sends out a crow, corvus, or raven. Bird doesn't come back. Noah says, well, I guess the waters haven't receded. And yet 7 days later, he sends out a dove. And the dove brings back an olive branch. That's Columba, right? Noah even has a drink. Okay, as this play keeps going, Noah gets drunk. This is crater. This is what the Greeks would serve wine out of. Okay, this is also the woman that holds the cup. Cup of wrath, cup of salvation. Okay, now for the many references that the Bible speaks about in regard to wine, okay, Virgo is not only the harvest season, where she holds the stalk of grain, she also represents wine season, okay? One of the stars in Virgo is named Vindemiatrix, referring to the vine, the grapevine, okay? Vindemiatrix was the symbol of the harvest of the grapes. And there's some old artwork. The pieces are called Jesus and the Wine Press. And they were drawn and painted way back during the same years that the Bible was created, right? So 1400s or so. And you see all this artwork that just looks kind of odd, but you see Jesus essentially in this proverbial wine press, and you see his blood being drained into a cup below. So to show you what this is referring to is as the sun lines up in this sign in the heavens, right? The sign of the pressing of the wine into the crater. If you watch how the sun rises, it's going to drain into this cup throughout the day, okay? As it then sets below the horizon. That pressing of the sun's vital life force, right? Or the drinking of the blood at the Last Supper, the communion, right? After that, we begin judgment, and the nights become longer than the days. Now, while we're talking about all this, many of you can recognize this painting. This is Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper, and da Vinci knew all this stuff. Okay, a lot of the artists did back then, putting these themes in their artwork. So if you see here, we have Jesus right in the middle, and right away, you can kind of see the three windows in the background, a lot like what I showed you guys with Stonehenge. Now to Jesus' left, you have this man spreading his arms out. Okay, that signifies the scales. He's representing Libra here. And naturally, right before that fall, on the left you have your spring and summer months, each grouped into threes, right, for each season. Those of you might recognize the third person from the left. Gemini rules the hands, and the guy has his hands up. But the only woman in the picture is Virgo, or the Virgin Mary. Okay, at the Last Supper, before judgment, right? Before Jesus or the Son crosses over the equator, he's going to be leaving the vicinity of the Virgin. Okay, if Leonardo da Vinci knew this, and Michelangelo knew it, and they showed it in their artwork, that shows you how prevalent this information was way back in these years. There's the betrayal through Scorpio, and Sagittarius, Capricorn, where the sun's at its death. Then we have this baptism moment, if you will. This is also John the Baptist, but we'll get into some of those stories in another video. Okay? How about 2 fish and a loaf of bread? Okay, we're in the age of Pisces right now. So meaning when you look up at March 21st, the constellation that's going to be the backdrop of the sun is actually Pisces because of this precession. Precession's a whole nother video, and I'm going to try and stay on topic here. As Jesus fed the masses with 2 fish and a loaf of bread, that's a very, very clear representation of this axis. Okay, Pisces, referring to the 2 fish, is straight across the zodiac from Virgo, right? Remember, she's not just the wine, she's also the harvest of the wheat. To further explain this, there's an asterism. An asterism is like a slang term for a smaller piece of a constellation. Astronomers and stargazers use these asterisms just to kind of better navigate themselves around. So there's an asterism in the constellation of Leo, and it's called the sickle. The sickle just really makes up the Leo's mane and face down to Regulus, the heart, right? Now, if we put the sun in this time of year, as it approaches the sickle, you could say that the sun is holding the sickle. The sun literally holds the sickle this time of year as it sets, telling the farmers that it's time to harvest. Okay, if not there, then definitely through Virgo. First the wheat, then the wine. This is the true meaning of on earth as it is in heaven.